The emergency alarm echoed through every corner of the Galactic Council chambers. For the first time in 3,000 years, every species representative looked genuinely terrified. The massive holographic display showed what remained of the Zilani homeworld, nothing but empty space and floating debris. Elder Kithara of the Peaceful Federation trembled as she addressed the assembly. Her voice cracked with each word. The Void Swarm has taken another world. 17 billion souls, gone in less than 6 hours. The council chamber fell silent. These were species that had solved hunger, disease, and war centuries ago. They built paradise worlds where conflict was just a historical curiosity. Their weapons were designed for asteroid mining, not warfare. Their soldiers were more like park rangers than fighters. "We don't even understand what these creatures want," whispered Ambassador Threx, his usual confident demeanor completely shattered. "They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They just consume everything living and move to the next system." The hologram shifted to show surveillance footage from the last moments of Zilani. Dark, writhing masses of organic matter swept across. Cities like tsunamis. People ran screaming, but there was nowhere to hide. The creatures seemed to feed on fear itself, growing stronger with every terrified scream. "Our defense fleets lasted 12 minutes, reported General Voss, shame evident in his voice. 12 minutes against something that's been dormant for millions of years. Our ancestors sealed these things away for good reason." Elder Cathara stood shakily. "We have no choice left. We must broadcast the ancient protocol, the call for heroes." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The hero protocol hadn't been used since the galaxy's dark ages. It was a desperate plea sent to every inhabited world, begging for beings willing to face certain death for the greater good. "Who would answer such a call?" asked one representative. "What sane species would volunteer to fight something that destroys entire civilizations?" "Perhaps," Cathara said quietly, "we need to stop looking for sane species." The message was prepared and transmitted across thousands of star systems. Most civilizations read it and immediately deleted it, considering it the desperate ravings of a doomed council. They had families, long lives ahead of them, peaceful worlds to protect. But in a small corner of the galaxy, on a blue planet orbiting a yellow star, something very different was happening. The humans who received that message didn't see a suicide mission. They saw the greatest challenge of their lives, and they were already packing their gear. The transmission reached Earth Defense Command at 0300 hours. Captain Jinho Park was nursing his third cup of coffee when the encrypted message appeared on his screen. Most officers would have forwarded it to higher command and gone back to their paperwork. Not Jinho. He read it twice, then smiled. Finally, something interesting. Within an hour, Jinho had submitted his volunteer application. By sunrise, his inbox was flooded with messages from soldiers, scientists, engineers, and even civilians wanting to join his team. Dr. Soyeon Kim, a xenobiologist, was the first to respond. "I've been waiting my whole career for something like this," she wrote. The Pentagon was in chaos. General Rodriguez couldn't believe the response. "Sir, we've received over 50,000 volunteer applications in the past 6 hours. They're coming from every branch of military, NASA, private contractors, even retired personnel." What shocked command most was the civilian response. Mechanics, doctors, teachers, and firefighters were all volunteering. Grandmother, in Sukcho, a 70-year-old veteran, submitted her application with a note. "I've lived enough. Let me die for something worthwhile." The alien observers monitoring Earth's communications were baffled. Ambassador Threx watched the human response with growing confusion. "They understand this is certain death, correct? Our translation algorithms aren't malfunctioning." "No, sir," his aide confirmed. "They fully comprehend the danger. Look at their message forums. They're making jokes about it." One human posted, "Finally, A vacation that doesn't require coming back. Meanwhile, Jinho assembled his core team. Engineer Minju Lee quit her civilian job within hours. My kids think I'm crazy. She laughed. But someone has to fix whatever breaks out there, right? Pilot Dongwon Nam was already running flight simulations. I've been flying cargo runs for 20 years. Time to fly something that actually matters. The most disturbing part for alien observers was the human enthusiasm. They weren't going because they had to. They were competing for the chance to go. Support groups formed overnight to help families of volunteers. Children drew pictures of their parents fighting space monsters. When the first transport ships launched from Earth, they carried not just soldiers, but farmers, cooks, musicians, and storytellers. The aliens had asked for heroes willing to die. Instead, humans sent people eager to live fully, even if briefly. The difference would prove crucial in the days ahead. Captain Ginho looked out at the stars as Earth shrank behind them. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders do best, he muttered, and his entire crew grinned back at him. Kepler station hung in space like a wounded bird, its hull scarred from recent void swarm attacks. When the human ships docked, the alien survivors weren't sure what to expect. They certainly didn't expect laughter. Look at this place, chuckled Private Woojin as he stepped off the transport. It's like someone took a space station and put it through a blender. The Zalani refugees nearby shuddered at his casual tone. For them, those scars represented the loss of everything they'd ever known. For humans, it was just another Tuesday. Ambassador Threx greeted the human delegation personally. Welcome to Kepler Station. I must warn you, what you're about to hear will disturb you greatly. Captain Jinho nodded politely. We appreciate the heads up, but we're pretty hard to disturb. The briefing room filled with holographic horror, footage of the void swarm consuming entire cities. Alien Council members watched the humans carefully, expecting to see fear, revulsion, maybe some common sense. Instead, Dr. Myra Kim was taking notes and asking technical questions. Fascinating organic structure, she murmured, zooming in on a creature's feeding appendage. The enzyme secretion pattern suggests they can digest almost any protein chain. Ingenious, really. Elder Cathara stared at her. Ingenious. These creatures destroyed my homeworld. Oh, absolutely terrible, Mira agreed cheerfully. But from a biological standpoint, they're remarkably efficient. Do you have any live specimens I could study? The aliens were horrified. Live specimens? Those things emit fear toxins that can paralyze most species from 50 meters away. Perfect. Mira grinned. I'll need protective gear and a really good microscope. Meanwhile, Sergeant Kyung Lee was in the training bay with alien security forces. The session wasn't going well. The Kepler guards kept flinching at simulated void swarm sounds. Okay, stop, Kyung called out. You're all thinking like prey. These things hunt fear. The more scared you act, the stronger they get. But they're terrifying, whispered one guard. How do we not be afraid? Kyung considered this. Back home, we had a saying, if you're going to be eaten, at least give them indigestion. Fear's just adrenaline with bad marketing, he demonstrated by charging directly at the holographic swarm creature, whooping like he was on a roller coaster. The aliens watched in stunned silence as he treated mortal danger like a fun game. Your species is deeply disturbing, muttered Ambassador Threx later. Thank you, Captain Jinho replied sincerely. We do our best. The first reconnaissance mission launched at dawn. Lieutenant Doyan Choi led a squad of 12 humans toward the contested zone where void swarm scouts had been spotted. The alien observers watched nervously from Kepler Station, expecting to witness another massacre. Contact in 30 seconds, reported Corporal Eugen over the comm. I can smell them from here. Smells like burnt electronics and fear. The moment they encountered the first void swarm creature, everything the aliens knew about warfare changed. The creature released its signature fear toxin, a cloud of psychoactive compounds that had paralyzed entire Zilani battalions within seconds. The humans ran straight into it. Who? That's some good stuff, laughed Private Sungwon, his pupils dilating as the toxin hit his bloodstream. Instead of collapsing in terror, his heart rate spiked and his reflexes sharpened. I feel like I could bench press a transport ship. Dr. Mira Kim, monitoring from the station, was recording everything. Remarkable. The fear toxins are triggering massive adrenaline releases. Their fight-or-flight response is stuck on fight. The Void Swarm creature, confused by this unusual reaction, attempted its life drain attack. Dark tendrils wrapped around Sergeant Hyunwoo, beginning to siphon his life force. The watching aliens gasped, expecting him to wither away like previous victims. Hey, that tickles, Hyunwoo grunted, then grabbed the tendril and yanked hard. My turn. The creature recoiled in shock. Where it had drained decades from long-lived species, it barely managed to steal a few months from the human. Worse, Hyunwoo seemed more annoyed than weakened. These things are used to fighting species that live for centuries, observed Captain Jinho. Taking 20 years from a being that lives 800 years is devastating. Taking 20 years from someone who lives 80. That's just early retirement. But the real game-changer was Doyen's tactical approach. Instead of the careful, individual defensive positions favored by other species, he coordinated his team like a wolf pack. Flanking. Maneuver. Pattern Delta, he called out. Yujin, drive it left. Sungwon, you're the hammer, I'm the anvil. The Void Swarm creatures had evolved to hunt solitary prey or scattered groups. They had no defense against coordinated pack tactics. While one human kept it distracted, others attacked from multiple angles simultaneously. This is impossible, whispered Ambassador Threx, watching the footage. They're treating it like a game. Not a game, corrected Elder Cathara, understanding dawning in her eyes. They're hunting. We sent farmers to fight wolves, and now we're watching apex predators work. Within an hour, the reconnaissance team had eliminated 3 Void Swarm scouts, and was requesting permission to push deeper into enemy territory. The attack came without warning. Alarms screamed across Kepler Station as Void Swarm creatures tore through the outer hull. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, trapping everyone in their current sections. The alien crew immediately followed protocol: lock down, hide, and wait for rescue. The humans had different ideas. In the station's main kitchen, Chef Unisong was preparing dinner when the creatures burst through the ventilation system. Most cooks would have run screaming. Yuna grabbed the nearest frying pan and swung it like a baseball bat. Not in my kitchen, she yelled, connecting with a satisfying crack against the creature's head. The monster staggered backward, confused by the aggressive response. Yuna looked around her domain and grinned. Industrial ovens, pressure cookers, meat slicers, chemical cleaners. Her kitchen was basically an armory, with better seasoning. She cranked the gas burners to maximum and started mixing cleaning solutions. Anyone want some barbecue? She called out, hurling a flaming pan of oil at the advancing creatures. 3 levels down, Engineer Sun Ho Han was having similar thoughts. The life support system he'd been maintaining suddenly became his weapon of choice. He rerouted atmospheric controls, creating pockets of pure oxygen near the air vents. Hey, ugly, he shouted at a creature, trying to break down his door. Want some fresh air? He ignited a spark near the oxygen-rich vent. The explosion sent the creature flying backward through the corridor wall. Note to self, Sunho chuckled. Update the safety manual. The alien observers watching through security cameras couldn't believe what they were seeing. Maintenance worker Ji-hoon Park was using a welding torch like a flamethrower. Medic Sahi Lim had turned her medical supplies into improvised explosives. Even the janitor, old Changman, was swinging his mop bucket like a medieval weapon. They're laughing, whispered Ambassador Threx in horror. They're actually laughing while fighting for their lives. Indeed, the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Every successful improvisation was met with cheers and jokes. When Yuna managed to trap 3 creatures in a walk-in freezer, she actually high-fived Sunho through the security feed. Back home, we call this Tuesday, Captain Jinho explained to the stunned alien council. Give a human some basic tools and a problem to solve, and we'll figure something out. But they're not trained for this, protested Elder Cathara. Ma'am, Jinho replied with a smile, we're humans. We've been improvising our way out of certain deaths since we discovered fire. This is just another day at the office. Dr. Jisubik had been studying Void Swarm specimens for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. While the alien scientists had given up after basic tissue analysis, she kept digging deeper. Something about their neural structure bothered her. That's impossible, she muttered, staring at her scanner readings for the 100th time. The neural pathways didn't make sense for individual creatures. They were more like network terminals. She called Captain Taiwan Jung to her makeshift lab. I need you to see this. Remember how these things seemed to know exactly where our weak points were during the attack? Taiwan nodded, like they were sharing information instantly. Because they were. Jisoo pulled up her holographic display. These aren't separate creatures. They're body parts of something much bigger. Every single Void Swarm entity shares the same consciousness through quantum entanglement. The implications hit Taiwan immediately. So when we kill one ... it doesn't really die. The consciousness just transfers to another body. We've been fighting individual fingers while the brain sits safely somewhere else. When they presented this discovery to the Galactic Council, the reaction was devastating. Elder Cathara literally collapsed into her chair. Then we've already lost. How do you kill something that can't die? Ambassador Threx was pacing frantically. Every battle, every sacrifice, every victory, meaningless. They were just testing us, learning our capabilities. The alien military commanders began discussing evacuation plans and surrender protocols. 3,000 years of peace had never prepared them for an enemy that treated death as a minor inconvenience. But the human response was different. So it's a hive mind, Taiwan said thoughtfully. That's actually good news. The alien stared at him in disbelief. Good news? How is immortal enemies good news? Because hive minds have a weakness, Taiwan explained, pulling up tactical displays. They depend on central coordination. Cut off the head, and the body dies. We just need to find the core consciousness. Dr. Jisoo was already working on tracking the quantum signatures. The entanglement patterns point to a central hub, probably hidden in dark space between star systems. Wonderful, Taiwan grinned. A suicide mission into uncharted space to fight an immortal enemy in its own backyard. Anyone else getting excited? The human volunteers around the room actually smiled back at him. The aliens watched in horrified fascination as the species that should be most terrified began planning the most dangerous operation in galactic history. Your species is insane, whispered Ambassador Threx. Thank you, Taiwan replied cheerfully. That's exactly what we're counting on. The strike team's ship, determined stupidity, pushed deeper into Void Swarm territory than any vessel had ever dared. Captain Taiwan Jung had personally chosen the name after an alien diplomat said humans were determinedly stupid. He considered it a compliment. Contact ahead, reported Navigator Nario, her voice steady despite the fact they were surrounded by enough hostile creatures to destroy a small moon. Looks like a welcoming committee. How many? Asked demolitions expert Jin Wu, already prepping his gear. About 300. Give or take a few dozen. Excellent, Jayan grinned. I was worried this would be boring. The Void Swarm had never encountered anything like this before. Their hive mind had analyzed millions of years of combat data, predicting every possible tactical response. Logical. Beings would retreat, seek reinforcements, or attempt stealth approaches. Instead, Nari hit the thrusters and charged straight into the center of the swarm formation. Leroy Jenkins. She screamed an ancient human battle cry that made absolutely no tactical sense. The swarm's predictive algorithms crashed trying to process this decision. Why would prey deliberately enter the mouth of the predator? What strategic advantage could this possibly provide? Nari, you magnificent lunatic, Jayan laughed, firing explosive rounds at point-blank range. Your funeral plans better include a really good party. Already planned, she called back, barrel rolling through a cluster of creatures. Open bar, terrible karaoke, and a slideshow of all my worst decisions. You're invited. The alien observers, monitoring from Kepler station, watched in stunned silence. These humans were treating a suicide mission like a weekend adventure. Communications specialist Jeong Kim was literally taking selfies while fighting for her life. Smile, ugly, she told a creature, trying to drain her life force, snapping a photo before kicking it out the airlock. This one's going straight to social media. The Void Swarm's confusion grew worse with every exchange. Human behavior patterns made no logical sense. They wasted energy on unnecessary communication, expressed joy during mortal danger, and seemed to actively seek out the most dangerous situations possible. Target acquired, announced Gunner Mung Ho Lee. Core facility dead ahead. It's heavily defended. Perfect, Nari replied. I was getting tired of easy fights. Easy, Jayon checked his ammunition count. We just fought through 300 hostiles with a ship held together by duct tape and pure spite. And we're still alive, Nari pointed out. Definitely too easy. The hive mind's central processors were overheating, trying to understand why these creatures found near-death experiences amusing. This fundamental misunderstanding would prove to be their greatest weakness. The core facility hung in space like a massive organic cathedral, pulsing with the combined consciousness of billions of void swarm entities. As the human strike team approached, the hive mind focused its full attention on these strange creatures that defied every logical prediction. Wow, that's not terrifying at all, muttered pilot Haijin Seo, staring at the writhing mass of biomechanical architecture. Looks like something from a really bad nightmare, or a really good horror movie, added engineer Minyuk from the back. Either way, I'm definitely not coming back here for vacation. The moment they breached the outer defenses, the hive mind made contact. Not through weapons or attacks, but direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication. It wanted to understand these incomprehensible beings before destroying them. Why do you come here to die for creatures you have never met? The voice echoed in their minds. Because it's the right thing to do, Haijin replied simply. The hive mind paused. In millions of years of existence, it had never encountered this concept. Every species it had consumed fought for survival, territory, or resources. Fighting for strangers was evolutionarily impossible. Explain this logic. There is no logic, laughed demolitions expert Qan. We're here because people needed help, and we could help them. That's it. The hive mind's processing power faltered. This made no sense. These humans gained nothing from this sacrifice. Their species would receive no benefit from their deaths. It was completely irrational. Now, Haijin shouted, recognizing the moment of confusion. What followed was the most chaotic assault in galactic history. Instead of coordinated military tactics, the humans split up and ran in completely random directions. Kiwan started setting off explosives with no apparent pattern. Communications officer Sunwoo began broadcasting human music at maximum volume. Medek Bora started treating wounded void swarm creatures while simultaneously fighting others. The hive mind couldn't predict chaos with no underlying logic. Every algorithm crashed, trying to process humans who would risk their lives to heal enemies while destroying their defenses. The central consciousness, designed to coordinate millions of entities, began experiencing something it had never felt before: confusion, doubt, and something that almost resembled fear. Keep it confused, Haijin ordered, diving straight into the core chamber, while the hive mind was paralyzed by cognitive dissonance. It can't adapt to behavior that makes no sense. As she placed the final explosive charges, the hive mind made one last desperate attempt to understand. You will gain nothing from this. Wrong, Haijin smiled. We'll gain everything that matters. The explosion at the hive mind's core sent shockwaves through the entire Void Swarm network. For the first time in millions of years, the collective consciousness experienced something completely alien to its nature. Genuine confusion about its own existence. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy simply stopped fighting. They hung motionless in space, their shared minds struggling to process what had just happened. How could beings willingly sacrifice everything for strangers? The concept was so foreign it created cascading errors throughout their neural network. Within hours, the entire Void Swarm began retreating into dark space, fleeing from an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the unstoppable force simply ... left. Captain. Taiwan Jung's voice crackled through the communications array. Mission accomplished. The core is down, and they're running scared. All human teams report back to base for pizza and terrible jokes about our near-death experiences. The Galactic Council emergency session was unlike anything in their recorded history. For the first time, they were meeting not to discuss tragedy, but to celebrate an impossible victory. The humans have saved us all, declared Elder Kithra, her voice filled with awe. Name your reward. Entire star systems, unlimited technology, permanent seats on the High Council, anything you desire. Captain Jin Park, representing Earth, smiled politely. We appreciate the offer, but we just need one thing. Name it. Coordinates to any other threats out there. Pirates, tyrants, monsters, whatever needs handling. The council chamber fell. Silent. Ambassador Threx leaned forward. You want more dangerous missions? Someone's got to do it, shrugged Pilot Haijin Seo, and honestly, we're pretty good at this stuff. Within weeks, human volunteer fleets were spreading across the galaxy. The Korthok slavers found themselves facing Sergeant Minsu Kim and his liberation specialists. The Draconian Empire met Captain Suyang Park's Diplomatic Solutions Squadron. Diplomacy apparently involving a lot of explosions. Wherever there were bullies, tyrants, or monsters, humans showed up with terrible jokes, improvised weapons, and an absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The galaxy slowly began to understand something profound. They hadn't just found heroes to save them from one threat. They had discovered a species that treated heroism like a hobby, who saw protecting strangers as the most natural thing in the universe. They don't fight because they have to, Elder Cathera observed, watching human ships patrol the outer sectors. They fight because they choose to. They are heroes, not by necessity, but by nature. Earth had answered their call for heroes by showing them what heroes actually looked like.